She never imagined that a single moment could change everything. A child she had once despised, the one she wished she had never known, was the very child she had been searching for all her life. In a place where truth hides in shadows and pain hides in silence, she would discover the secret that would break her heart and heal it at the same time. What if the person you've been fighting against was the one your soul had been longing for all along? The morning air in the small village was thick and warm, carrying the scent of earth after last night's rain. A woman named Ephema stepped out of her narrow wooden home, her face tight with worry. She had heard the laughter of children nearby, sharp and careless, but hers had stopped years ago. That silence inside her home was heavier than any grief she could name. Ephema was once full of dreams. She had married young, hoping for a house filled with love and children. But life had other plans. Her husband left when her child was barely a year old, and the child vanished without a trace. Some said the child had been taken by a distant relative, others whispered darker stories. Ephema never knew the truth. Now she lived with the pain of unanswered questions, a wound that stayed raw. She moved toward the center of the village where voices gathered. A market had begun to wake. Traders were setting out baskets of yams, cloth dyed in bright colors, and piles of tomatoes glistening in the heat. A boy stood near the well, holding a battered bowl of porridge. His clothes were ragged, and his face carried the dirt of long days without care. He looked tired, yet there was something stubborn in his eyes, something that made Ephema stop in her tracks. She did not know why, but her chest felt tight when she saw him. Something about the way he held himself, the way his eyes darted to hers, stirred something deep inside her. She tried to look away, but her feet kept her rooted to the spot. From across the road came the sound of a woman's laughter, soft and warm. The boy glanced that way, a quick shadow passing over his face. He dropped the bowl and ran without looking back. Ephema watched him disappear down the dusty path, a strange ache settling in her heart. That day, she could not shake the feeling that something was unfolding that she could not yet name. She spent hours in her small home, staring at the walls as though they could speak back to her. Her mind kept returning to the boy at the well, to the look in his eyes. She decided to visit the woman who lived near the path where the boy had run. Her name was Ada, and she was known for knowing much about the village's secrets. Ephema found Ada sitting outside her home, weaving cloth. Ada's face broke into a smile when she saw her. "You look troubled," Ada said gently. Ephema nodded without speaking. Ada studied her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You've seen him too." Ephema stiffened. "Seen who?" "The boy. You know the one. The one people say has no family." Ada's voice lowered, as if afraid someone might hear. "He belongs to someone, Ephema. But no one knows who." Ephema felt her throat tighten. "Why does this matter to you?" Ada leaned closer. "Because he is not just any child. There's a story about him, and it's tied to you whether you believe it or not." Ephema frowned. "What story?" Ada shook her head. "That is something you must find out for yourself." When Ephema returned home, the sun was low and the sky painted in shades of red and gold. She could not stop thinking about the boy. She did not know that this day would mark the start of a journey that would change her life forever, a path that would reveal truths she was not ready to face. But something deep inside her stirred with an uneasy certainty. She felt that if she ignored the pull she had felt earlier, she would lose something she could never regain. That night, as the village fell quiet, Ephema sat awake. She thought of the boy by the well. She thought of Ada's words. And she knew that tomorrow she would have to find him. The next morning woke with a soft haze. The village was quieter than usual, as if it too was holding its breath. Ephema stepped outside earlier than normal. Her heart was restless, like something had settled deep in her chest and refused to let go. She thought about the boy again. The way his eyes had looked at her lingered in her mind, haunting her. She could not explain why, but she knew she needed to find him. She walked slowly through the village, passing familiar faces. Traders were busy arranging baskets of fresh peppers and yams. Children ran barefoot, their laughter echoing faintly in the distance. But her eyes were searching for something beyond all of it. Something she could not name. By mid-morning, she found herself walking toward the path where she had last seen him. The path wound through fields where cassava grew thick and tall, bending slightly under the weight of the leaves. The air smelled faintly of earth and rain from the night before. She walked carefully, her steps soft. As she moved deeper into the path, her mind drifted back to Ada's words. The way Ada had said, "There is a story about him," still rang in her ears. But what story could a ragged boy have that would matter so much? She reached the edge of the path and stopped. There was no sign of him. Only footprints in the dust, fading under the early sunlight. The footprints seemed fresh, and her breath hitched. She decided to follow them. The path led her deeper, past the last row of houses and into a quiet part of the village where fewer people came. There were old houses here, some with roofs patched with palm leaves. The air was cooler, and the silence was heavier. She followed the trail until it ended at a small clearing near a stream. The sound of running water was soft but steady, a calming hum. There, by the edge of the water, sat the boy. He was not eating or playing. He was simply sitting with his knees drawn to his chest, staring at the stream as though it held answers he had been searching for. His clothes were torn, his skin marked with dirt and scars that told a silent story of hardship. Ifema froze. She did not know why she stayed hidden, but something told her to watch him from a distance. She studied his face carefully. He looked younger than she remembered from yesterday, but his eyes still held that same stubborn look that had unsettled her. The boy shifted slightly and glanced toward her hiding place. Their eyes met, and he did not look away. Instead, his gaze seemed to pierce through her, as if he already knew her, as if he recognized something she could not name. Ifema's breath caught. She stepped forward slowly, her heart pounding loud in her chest. She wanted to speak to him, but words seemed to slip away when she opened her mouth. Finally, she said softly, "Why are you here alone?" The boy did not answer. He stared at her as though measuring her, trying to decide if she was safe. Then, without warning, he turned and ran into the trees beyond the clearing. His steps were quick and sure, his small figure disappearing into the green shadows. Ifema stood there, stunned. Her hands trembled. She had wanted answers, but all she got was silence and a disappearing boy. She stayed by the stream for a long time, staring at the place where he had vanished. The air grew hotter as the sun climbed higher, but she did not move. The pull inside her grew stronger. It was not curiosity anymore, it was something deeper, something like fear and hope wrapped together. When she finally returned to her home, the village had changed. People spoke in low voices about the boy who had appeared near the stream. Some said he had come from the forest, others said he had been seen in other parts of the village before disappearing again. Whispers filled the air, and Ifema heard her own name mentioned quietly. That evening, she went to Ada again. Ada was sitting outside, her cloth half-woven, her face calm yet knowing. Ifema did not waste words. "I found him," she said quietly. Ada looked at her and nodded. "Did he speak to you?" "No. He ran," Ifema said, frustration lacing her voice. "But something about him. Ada, there is something about him I cannot explain." Ada leaned forward. "That boy has been part of this village for longer than most remember. But he is not meant to be forgotten. Ifema, you need to be careful. The things hidden in his past are dangerous. And they will reach you if you follow him." Ifema's hands clenched. "I have to know, Ada. I cannot stop now." Ada sighed. "Then you must go deeper. But promise me you will be ready for what you might find. Not all truths heal. Some burn." That night, Ifema could not sleep. She lay awake, the boy's face haunting her dreams. She kept hearing his silent stare, like a question she could not answer. She felt drawn toward him, and her heart ached with something she could not name. By the time the first light of dawn touched the village, Ifema had made her decision. She would follow him into the forest, no matter where it led. Little did she know that this journey would not only uncover the boy's past but force her to face a truth she had buried deep within her soul. And she would soon learn that sometimes, the thing you hate the most is the thing you have been searching for all along. The day broke with a soft light, the kind that felt like a promise and a warning at the same time. Ifema rose before the sun touched the village, her mind still tangled in the thoughts of yesterday. She moved quietly through her home, careful not to wake her neighbors. The air was still cool, and a faint wind carried the scent of fresh earth. She packed a small cloth bag with bread, dried fish, and a flask of water. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from a strange mix of hope and dread. She knew Ada's warning weighed heavy, but she could not ignore the pull. The boy had opened something inside her, something that refused to rest until she found him. Before she left, she stood outside her home for a long moment. The village was waking slowly, women stirring pots, children chasing each other along narrow paths, traders calling softly to one another. Yet in her chest was a stillness that felt unlike the morning itself, as if her heart was standing at a door, waiting for her to cross. She made her way toward the forest path where she had last seen him. The path was uneven, framed by tall grasses and old trees that bent toward each other like they were whispering secrets. As she moved deeper, the sounds of the village faded, replaced by birdsong and the soft rustle of leaves. The air became cooler the further she walked. Somewhere above, a bird cried out sharply. Ifema paused, her breath slow and steady. She thought she heard footsteps behind her, soft and careful, but when she turned there was nothing but shadows and light. She walked for hours, following the winding path deeper into the heart of the forest. She felt a strange pull, as if the forest itself was guiding her. The sun moved high and began to burn through the canopy, scattering light in streaks that danced on the ground. Finally, she reached a clearing. The air here felt heavier, filled with silence. There was no sound of birds, no whisper of leaves. It was as though the forest had stopped breathing. And then she saw him. The boy was sitting near the roots of a tall tree. His clothes were even more worn than before, and his face carried new marks, faint scars that seemed older than his years. He looked tired, but he did not move. His eyes were fixed on something in the air between them. Ifema stepped closer, her heart pounding in her chest. "Why are you here alone?" she asked again, her voice low. The boy turned his gaze toward her slowly. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, without speaking, he stood and began walking deeper into the trees. His steps were slow, almost hesitant, but he did not look back. Ifema followed, her own pace quickening. She called his name softly, but he did not answer. The deeper they went, the darker the forest became. Shadows moved like living things, and the air grew cooler with every step. After what felt like hours, they came to a place unlike anything Ifema had ever seen. The trees here were twisted, their roots curling above the ground like the fingers of something sleeping. The air was thick with the smell of moss and something faintly sweet, like flowers long dead. The boy stopped before a clearing where the ground was bare, except for a circle of stones. In the center lay a small wooden box, old and weathered. The boy crouched beside it, his fingers hovering over the lid. Ifema's breath caught. She did not understand why, but her chest felt as if it were tightening. The boy looked at her then, and for the first time, he spoke. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "They told me I could not go back." Ifema stepped closer, but the boy pulled away slightly. "Go back to what?" she asked gently. "To her," he said. His voice cracked, and he looked away toward the trees. "To the one who doesn't want me." Something inside her shifted. Her chest ached, and her mind raced. The words made no sense, but her heart knew something the mind could not explain. "Why would you say that?" she asked softly. The boy opened the wooden box. Inside was a bundle of cloth, frayed and worn. He pulled it out slowly, as if afraid to break something. When he unfolded it, Ifema's breath stopped. It was a piece of clothing she recognized instantly, the small shirt her child once wore, the one she had kept hidden in a trunk for years. Her hands went cold. Her knees felt weak. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. The boy did not answer. Instead, he stepped back, eyes locked on hers. There was something in him that spoke without words, something that pulled at her deepest fears and her hidden hopes. Ifema felt tears blur her vision. Her voice cracked. This was my child's shirt." The boy said nothing. He dropped the cloth gently into her hands and turned away toward the darkness of the forest. Ifema stood frozen, the shirt clutched to her chest. The air around her felt heavier now, filled with whispers she could not understand. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the truth was close. But she was not ready for it. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, determined to follow him. What she did not know was that the path ahead was not only going to uncover a truth she had spent years trying to bury, but it was going to change her life forever. And she would soon discover that sometimes, the thing you hate the most is the thing you have been searching for all along. The forest seemed to close in around Ifema as she stepped deeper, her hand still clutching the worn cloth. Her heart pounded as if it had learned a rhythm all its own, a rhythm she could neither control nor quiet. Every step felt heavy, but she could not stop. The boy was ahead of her, moving slowly yet purposefully, as though he was leading her somewhere she was both meant and afraid to go. The air was cooler now, carrying the scent of damp earth and an unfamiliar sweetness that clung to her skin. The deeper they went, the darker it became. Light pierced through in thin streaks, painting strange patterns on the ground. The forest was alive in a way she had never known, not with noise but with a stillness that made her skin itch. She noticed something strange. The boy's footsteps made no sound. No rustle of leaves, no crack of twigs. Ifema glanced down at her own feet, every sound of her steps echoed sharply. She stopped for a moment, her breath catching. Something about him felt otherworldly. They walked until they reached a place unlike any she had ever seen before. The trees here were enormous, their trunks wide as houses, bark carved with strange markings she could not understand. The air was thick here, and there was a faint hum, almost like a song without words. The boy stopped at the center of a clearing, his back to her. Ifema stepped forward, her hand trembling. "Why here?" she asked softly. The boy turned slowly. His face was calm, but there was a depth in his eyes that unsettled her. "Because this is where it begins," he said quietly. His voice was steady, but there was pain hidden in it. She stepped closer. "Begins what?" He did not answer. Instead, he knelt beside a circle of stones, reaching into the earth as though searching for something. His fingers touched the ground lightly, and Ifema noticed they trembled. For a moment, the forest was silent except for the faint hum that seemed to grow louder. Ifema felt her breath quicken. "Who are you?" she asked softly, but the boy did not look at her. He pulled something from the dirt, a small bundle wrapped in cloth. He opened it slowly, revealing a piece of cloth inside that looked older than anything she had ever seen. When she looked closer, her breath caught. It was the same cloth from the shirt she had once kept hidden for years, the one her child had worn before vanishing. She stepped closer, her hand reaching out, but the boy drew back. "This belongs to you," he said quietly. "But it is not yours yet." Confusion and pain surged in her chest. "What do you mean? Where did you find this?" He looked at her then, and she saw something in his eyes that made her stomach twist. It was sorrow, but also recognition. "Because it was mine too," he said softly. Ifema froze. Her mind raced. His words felt like a lock she could not open, a puzzle she could not solve. "What do you mean it was yours?" she asked again, her voice trembling. The boy stood and stepped toward the circle of stones. "I am the child you lost. But I was taken before you could find me." His voice was steady, but there was a pain in it that made her heart break. Ifema stumbled back, clutching the cloth to her chest. Her breath came in short, ragged bursts. "No, that cannot be," she whispered, though her voice was barely more than a breath. "It cannot be true." He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I have waited for you," he said softly. "Even when I did not know who you were." Tears welled in her eyes. She could not speak. Her knees felt weak. The ground beneath her seemed to shift, and the hum in the forest grew louder, as though it was carrying her own heartbeat. The boy reached out his hand toward her, but she hesitated. Her mind was a storm of confusion, grief, and longing. "Why did you not come to me?" she asked at last, her voice breaking. "I could not," he said quietly. "They told me I must prove myself first. That I must find the truth before I could return." Ifema felt her tears spill freely now. "Oh, my child," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I have looked for you for years." The boy stepped forward slowly. "And I have looked for you too," he said softly. His hand finally touched hers, cold but steady. "But we have little time. You must know the truth before it is too late." Ifema's heart felt as though it would break into 1,000 pieces. Her mind was filled with questions, but her body was frozen in the moment. The boy's presence was overwhelming, like a memory she could not place. The forest around them seemed to shift. The hum grew stronger, wrapping around them like a living thing. Somewhere deep within her, Ifema felt the weight of something vast and ancient. She did not know if it was fear or hope, but she knew her life had changed forever. The boy stepped away, toward the circle of stones. "I cannot tell you everything now," he said quietly. "But you must follow me deeper. There is a place where all will be revealed." Ifema nodded, even though her voice failed her. She held the cloth tightly to her chest, her tears falling freely. She knew that whatever lay ahead would not only change her life, but would test her in ways she could not imagine. As they walked deeper into the forest together, the air grew heavier, the shadows longer. Somewhere ahead, the hum became a song, low, haunting, and impossible to ignore. And somewhere deep in her heart, Ifema knew that the truth waiting for her was far more dangerous and heartbreaking than she could ever imagine. The deeper they went into the forest, the heavier the air became. It was no longer simply cool or still, it felt as though the world around them had shifted into something older, something alive with memory. Every step Ifema took was slow, measured, as if she feared disturbing something sacred. The boy walked ahead without looking back, his steps certain, though slow, and his shoulders carried the weight of something she could not yet name. The path became narrower. Thick roots stretched across the ground, forcing her to lift her feet higher. Shadows danced around them, cast by light that seemed to come from nowhere. The hum grew louder. It was no longer just a sound, it became something she felt in her chest, something pulling her forward. She glanced at the boy. His face was calm, but his eyes were fixed somewhere ahead. There was a quiet strength in him now, a resolve that made her heart ache. She did not ask where they were going. She already knew that the answer would change everything. They came to a place where the trees grew so tall and close together that no sunlight could pass through. The ground was soft, almost spongy beneath their feet, and the air was filled with a faint glow that seemed to come from the moss covering the roots. The boy stopped suddenly. "This is where it changes," he said softly. Ifema looked around. There was nothing visible, nothing to explain what he meant. "Changes how?" she asked, though her voice was barely more than a breath. He turned toward her then, his eyes steady and certain. "You will see," he said. "Everything will be clear soon." They stepped into a small clearing, one that felt older than time itself. In the center was a stone altar, covered in moss and vines. Around it were carvings so faint they were almost invisible, but she could feel their meaning in her bones. The hum was now louder, resonating deep in her chest. The boy knelt before the altar, placing the cloth from earlier gently upon it. "This is where the truth will be revealed," he said quietly. He looked up at her, his gaze unwavering. "But you must be ready for it." Ifema swallowed hard. Her breath felt caught somewhere between fear and hope. "Ready or not, I need to know," she said. The boy's hand moved over the cloth. The moment his fingers touched it, the air seemed to shift. The glow around them grew stronger. The carvings on the stone began to glow faintly, and a low voice seemed to rise from the earth itself, soft at first, then stronger, as though it was calling something she had long forgotten. Ifema stepped closer, her heart pounding. She felt the hum in her chest growing louder. It was not just sound now, it was something she could feel in her bones, a vibration that pulled her forward. The boy's eyes never left the altar. "This is my truth," he said softly. "And it will be yours too, if you dare to take it." Efima's hand reached out, trembling, toward the cloth. The moment she touched it, a rush of memories came flooding through her, memories she had buried deep within herself. She saw a child, laughing in the sunlight. She saw herself, cradling him, whispering promises she could no longer remember. She saw fear, loss, and a moment when everything changed. Her knees gave way, and she sank to the ground. The cloth fell from her hands. Her tears flowed freely now, each one carrying pieces of the past she had long forgotten. The boy knelt beside her. "Mother," he said softly. The word was simple, but it struck her like thunder. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with shock. "No, it cannot be," she whispered. You are gone. I searched for you, for years." His hand touched her cheek gently, and she flinched at the warmth. "I was lost," he said softly. "But I found my way here. I found you." Efima's breath was uneven. Her mind was a storm of emotions, disbelief, pain, longing, and a deep aching she could not name. "Why didn't you come to me?" she asked again, her voice breaking. "I had to come this way," he said quietly. "They told me I had to prove myself. That I had to walk this path before I could return to you. This place, it is where the truth lives." The hum around them grew louder. The glow from the altar filled the clearing. Efima felt her heart pounding, her tears flowing freely. She did not understand what he meant, but something deep inside her knew that everything she had ever believed was about to change forever. He took her hand. "Come," he said softly. "We have to finish this." She rose slowly, her legs weak but her will stronger than ever. She stepped forward with him toward the altar, toward the light, toward whatever truth was waiting for her. The air grew warmer now, the hum turning into a song that seemed to speak directly to her soul. It was filled with sorrow and hope, pain and promise. Efima knew there was no turning back. The path they were on would change everything. And deep inside, she understood that what she was about to see would break her heart and yet make her whole at the same time. The clearing seemed to breathe around them as they stepped closer to the stone altar. The air was thicker now, filled with a quiet energy that pressed against Efima's skin. It was no longer just a forest, it was something ancient, a place untouched by time, holding secrets older than memory. Her hand remained locked in the boy's, his grip steady but warm, grounding her even as her heart raced. The cloth lay upon the stone, glowing faintly, as though holding a pulse. Efima felt drawn toward it, though part of her was terrified of what she might find. The boy looked at her for a long moment, his eyes deep and still, before he stepped aside. "You must touch it," he said softly. "It will tell you everything." She swallowed hard. Her legs felt weak, but her feet moved anyway. Every step felt heavier than the last. When her fingers brushed the cloth, a rush of sensation tore through her. It was not just memory. It was a flood. She saw herself years ago, the laughter of a child in her arms, a tiny hand clutching hers with perfect trust. She saw her own tears, her own cries, her own heart breaking when he was taken. She saw a stranger in a dark night, taking the child away, and she saw herself screaming, powerless to stop it. Her breath caught. Her knees bent under her. The vision shifted, faster now, pulling her through fragments of time she could barely understand. She saw the boy, not as he was now, but as a child wrapped in cloth, crying in a strange place far from her. She saw him growing up in a different world, learning to hide his sorrow, learning to carry it quietly, without complaint. The vision slowed, and she found herself back in the clearing, tears streaming down her face. Her voice trembled. "It's true," she whispered. "It's you." The boy stepped closer. "Yes, Mother," he said softly. His voice carried a strange weight, like a promise and a confession all at once. "I am your child. But I am also something else now." She stared at him, confusion and grief warring inside her. Something else? He nodded. The world I lived in after was not meant for me. They taught me things I cannot undo. But I have come back to you because it is the only way to heal. Ifima's hands shook. Her tears fell freely now, her chest aching in ways she could not explain. Why now? Why after so many years? He looked down at the altar, then back at her. Because it is the only moment we have. The truth comes at a price. You must decide if you are ready to pay it. The hum in the clearing became louder, surrounding them completely, as though the forest itself was speaking. The glow from the altar intensified until it was impossible to look at directly. Ifima blinked rapidly, her vision swimming with light and sound. Suddenly, the boy stepped forward, placing his hand over hers on the cloth. I cannot do this without you, he said softly. The path we walk must be together. She felt her breath catch. Her chest tightened. Everything inside her screamed both yes and no. But before she could speak, the air shifted again. The glow from the altar pulsed like a heartbeat. The carvings in the stone began to shift and change, forming shapes she could not understand. They told a story of loss, of journeys, of sacrifice. A voice rose above the hum, deeper than the boy's, older than the forest itself. It spoke her name. Ifima. She froze. Her heart hammered. The voice continued, telling her of choices, of the consequences of truth, of what lay ahead. Her mind screamed to understand, but the words were not in any language she knew. Somehow, she understood anyway. This was the moment that would decide everything. The boy looked at her, eyes steady but filled with pain. Mother, we cannot turn back now, he said softly. We must finish what began long ago. Ifima nodded slowly. Her tears fell in silence, but her resolve grew. She took a deep breath and stepped forward into the glow. Her hand closed over the boy's. The altar pulsed once more, and the world seemed to shift around them. Light became everything, a river of memories, voices, emotions. Ifima felt her body tremble under its weight. The boy whispered her name again, and she knew, deep in her heart, that she was standing at the edge of something irreversible. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that the moment of truth was coming, the moment that would change not only her life, but the life of the child she had lost and hated. The glow reached a blinding peak, and then everything went silent. The silence after the glow was heavy. It felt like the air itself had been folded into stillness. Ifima blinked, her eyes adjusting to the clearing that now looked different. The stone altar no longer glowed, but it hummed softly under her touch, like a heart that still carried life. The boy stood before her, his face pale in the fading light, his hand still holding hers. She could not speak. Her chest felt full of something she could not name: grief, relief, love, regret, hope. It was too much all at once. Finally, the boy spoke. Mother, I've walked this path alone for years. I learned to live without you. But now I know I cannot live without telling you everything. Ifima's breath caught. She pulled her hand from his and took a step back, staring at him as though she was seeing him for the first time. Everything? She asked, her voice trembling. Even why? He nodded. Even why? I was taken from you the night of the storm. I don't know why they brought me away. They never told me. I grew up believing you had forgotten me, that you had given up. But somewhere, deep inside, I believed you were still looking for me. The words struck her like thunder. Her hands clutched her chest. I searched every day, she whispered, tears spilling freely. I prayed. I begged the gods to bring you back. Every night, I would close my eyes and see you, calling your name. He stepped toward her. His voice was soft but certain. I have been listening to you all these years, Mother. You carried me in your heart even when you could not carry me in your arms. But I needed to find the truth for myself before I could come back to you. The clearing seemed to breathe again, the air warm and heavy. The hum returned, wrapping around them, as though the earth itself was blessing their reunion. She took a trembling step closer. Why did you call me mother just now? You never did before. His gaze dropped for a moment. Because I finally understood what you meant to me. I understood what I lost. And I understood that the anger I carried was not just for what happened to me, it was for you too. I blamed you without knowing the truth. Now I know you never stopped loving me. Her knees weakened, and she sank to the ground beside him. She reached for his face, cupping it gently. I hated the years without you. But I never hated you. I was angry at the world for taking you from me. I didn't know if I could survive the loss. His lips quivered, and tears streamed down his face. I hated myself for letting the pain grow inside me. But I am here now, Mother. I am here. For a long moment, they sat in silence, holding each other in the quiet of the clearing. The air seemed to hum with something deep and ancient: forgiveness, reunion, the closing of a wound older than either of them could name. The boy stood first. He extended his hand to her. Come with me, he said softly. There is more you need to know. She took his hand, her grip tight. Together they approached the altar once more. The carvings glowed faintly again, revealing scenes she could now understand: her child being taken, wandering, searching, and finally returning. The images told her that this was not only an ending but also a beginning. The boy's voice broke the silence. Mother, there is a choice. We can leave this place and carry our truth into the world. Or we can stay here and let this truth remain, unspoken to anyone else. Ifema stared at him, her heart torn. But she knew what her answer had to be. We carry it, she said softly. The world must know that love does not end, no matter how lost it becomes. He nodded, a tear falling down his cheek. Together, they stepped away from the altar, hand in hand, leaving the clearing glowing softly behind them. The path before them was unknown, but they walked it together. The forest seemed to part for them, the air alive with promise. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of a gentle river echoed. The boy looked back once, and she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before: peace. They stepped forward, their shadows stretching long behind them in the fading light. For Ifema, every step was a prayer. Every breath was a promise. She had found her child again. And even though they had lost so much time, they had found the most precious thing of all: each other. The boy whispered softly, almost to himself, too late, but not too late to be whole. Ifema looked at him, her voice trembling with all the weight of years. We still have tomorrow. And together, they disappeared into the forest, the hum fading behind them, leaving only the quiet truth that no matter how deep the pain, love could find its way home. And so, their journey taught us something powerful: that even when time feels lost, love can find its way back. Every ending is just the start of something new. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and join us for more tales that move your soul. Tell us in the